What's going on, Gator Nation? Welcome back to a peek inside Gators football. Now that the dust has finally settled, Florida officially has its full coaching staff in place under new head coach Jon Sumrall. And today I want to walk you through this group as a whole and not just listing names, but explaining why these hires are important, what they tell us about the direction of Florida football moving forward, and what we think kind of the thought process was in these picks. From the very beginning, Summerall made it clear that Florida wasn't going to, uh, for lack of a better word, half-ass anything. This wasn't about, keeping specific pieces of an old regime or just going after the biggest, splashiest hire he possibly could. I really think it was more about alignment. Coaches who share similar philosophies with Summerall and who understand development and know what it takes to compete week in and week out in the SEC. And when you look at this staff from top to bottom, I really do think you can see that theme woven in throughout. Now, before I get into that, I do want to tell you guys I have a big picture 2026 piece that I've been working really hard on that's going to come out on Christmas Day. You don't want to miss it. I know Christmas is busy, but when you're driving in the car or if you just need a few minutes to clear your head because it's been a crazy day with all the family, I want you to listen to this. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you get a notification when it drops. I really think there's some good things on the horizon, and I talk in depth about what those things might be. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel right this minute if you aren't. Okay, we're going to dive into this. Let's start with offense because something that Summerall said during his introductory comments kind of caught my attention. I think should have caught everybody's attention. He said at Florida, explosive offense isn't optional. I think that tells you everything you need to know about what he wants this unit to become. And that vision starts with offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner. Faulkner brings something Florida has badly needed. Experience calling offenses at multiple levels in multiple different schemes and doing it successfully. He's been an offensive coordinator for more than a decade, and most recently, he oversaw a Georgia Tech offense that finished among the best in the country in total offense and in scoring. This was not a gimmick offense. It was balanced, it was efficient, and it was quarterback friendly. Just as important, Faulkner understands the SEC. His time at Georgia during their national championship run matters. He has seen what elite looks like. And I do think that that perspective is critical when you're trying to close the gap between good and championship level football. Pairing Faulkner with quarterbacks coach Joe Craddock is another, I would say, quietly important move. Craddock has been an offensive coordinator himself. He's the offensive coordinator at Tulane. He's developed quarterbacks, he's called plays, and he's worked alongside Summerall for multiple seasons. That continuity matters, especially at a position where Florida has lacked stability in recent years. But this hire is interesting to me too, because, we watched the previous staff bring all of their staff from their old G6 school and think that it could just translate to the SEC. Bringing the offensive coordinator from Tulane and making him the quarterbacks coach at Florida, that makes sense to me. That's not taking an offensive coordinator from the G5 and hoping it works in the SEC. That's saying, hey, you were able to do this at a lower level and you're probably one day going to be good at it at the SEC, but we're going to give you smaller responsibility to start with because you haven't cut your teeth yet. And I think that it's just such a smart move. And this isn't going to be a setup where the quarterback's coach is just holding a clipboard. Craddock and Faulkner and the rest of the offensive staff are being asked to collaborate, and that is how modern offenses succeed. Summerall has said that a great offensive coordinator would want to come to Florida because if the offense finds success, nobody's going to say, hey, that's the head coach's system. Summerall's a defensive guy. So he was looking for a coach that he could trust to essentially be the head coach of the offense. And he thinks that that's what he has found in Faulkner. I want to say thank you to Sleeper. They have been our partner this entire season long. I have a code for them. It is PEEK, P-E-E-K. They will match your first deposit up to $100. They have been phenomenal for us this season. Make sure you go to their website, download the app. Lots of fun things that you can do. These upcoming bowl season, the playoffs, the NFL games are still going on, so make sure you check them out. Up front, I think the hire of Phil Trautwein might be one of the most important moves that Sumrall made. Trautwein isn't just a former Gator. He is a proven offensive line developer who has coached dozens of all-conference linemen and helped send multiple players to the NFL. He understands what elite offensive line play looks like, and he understands the standard at Florida because he lived it. Phil was on our 2006 and 2008 national championship teams. His hire signals something that I think Florida fans have been waiting to hear. The Gators want to be physically dominant again. I think lots of us have PTSD from poor offensive line play and recruiting misses with offensive players. Look for Phil Trautwein to change that. At the skill positions, I think there's a clear emphasis on development and recruiting ties. Marcus Davis at wide receiver brings SEC experience and strong Florida recruiting connections. Evan McKissick at tight end understands Sumrall's system and how to use tight ends as matchup weapons, not afterthoughts, and probably not your number one target. And then there's that final offensive piece, running backs coach Chris Foster. I think this hire matters more than people realize. And I get it. Some people feel like we missed on this hire, that there were other coaches we swung for and struck out. And I know a lot of people are upset that Jaluk is now at Texas, but I do not think that the UAA would have allowed him to stay after that LSU slap heard around the world. So I don't think that that was a Sumrall choice. I really think that was probably a UAA choice. I actually think that Foster is a really solid hire, though. He has developed elite production everywhere he's been, including multiple 1,000-yard rushers and NFL talent. At Duke, his running backs were among the best in the ACC. At previous stops, his units ranked near the top nationally in rushing production. And just as important, I think that this does send a message to the roster, probably particularly Jaden Baugh, that Florida is serious about developing running backs, not just recruiting them to UF. In today's college football landscape, that matters just as much as NIL. I won't pretend to know how this Jaden Baugh situation is going to work out, but I do really feel like Sumrall is trying his best to retain him. Now let's flip to the defensive side of the ball. If the offense is about explosiveness, the defense under Sumrall looks to be built around structure, discipline, and maybe most importantly, toughness. Hiring Brad White as defensive coordinator brings immediate credibility to this staff. White's defenses at Kentucky were consistently among the best in the SEC in scoring defense and situational football. Even during down years, his units were organized and they were competitive. This is a coach that Sumrall knows and trusts, and I think that that trust matters when you're trying to implement a system very quickly. Sumrall said, I want to win, and I want to win now. He's not trying to build something 5 years in the future. He wants to win as quickly as possible. Up front, retaining and promoting Gerald Chapman was another telling move, I think. Chapman has already proven that he can develop NFL caliber defensive linemen at Florida. And instead of just starting over, Sumrall doubled down on that continuity. He rewarded the results there. And he said, you know what? This was a piece to the puzzle that was actually working. So we're not going to change that. At linebacker and in the secondary, I think the theme continues. Coaches with proven production, coaches with recruiting ability, and coaches that are familiar with the system. Bam Hardman returns to Gainesville. He's got deep Florida roots. He's got a reputation for developing edge rushers, and he's a former player who understands what it means to be a Gator. And I will say, I think that hiring former players when the fit makes sense is really important. I don't need you to hire a former player just to say you have one on staff. I need you to hire one that's really good at his job and has the added benefit of being able to give you kind of an insight as to what it means to wear the orange and blue. Greg Gasparato has coordinated top defenses at both Troy and Tulane. Chris Collins and Brandon Harris bring experience coaching DBs at a high level, and their past success shows up in their statistics. And, I think one of the more intriguing moves is retaining DeJuan Wilkins and expanding his role. Now, Wilkins is 25, very, very young. He'll coach the star position, and I think that potentially makes him the youngest position coach in the SEC. And I do think that that tells you that Summerall isn't afraid to trust young talent as long as they have earned that right. Special teams and strength and conditioning are often overlooked, not on this channel, but other places. And I think Florida has made upgrades in both areas. Jonathan Galante arrives as the Broyles Award nominee. His special teams units were elite: kickers, punters, return units. All of that mattered at Tulane, and it should matter at Florida too, and hopefully it will moving forward. Special teams can swing games, and I think that this staff understands that. I will stand on my soapbox for a second and stress that for the last 4 years, Florida has lacked attention to detail in special teams, and it has cost the Gators games again and again. It is 1/3 of the game, and it deserves to be treated as such. It was not under the previous staff, and it makes my little heart happy to see some emphasis on special teams. Rusty Witt takes over strength and conditioning, and this hire might tell you more about Summerall's philosophy than any other hire. Witt brings decades of experience, military leadership, and a reputation for building tough and durable teams. Florida wants to be physical and ready for a 4-quarter fight every Saturday, and I do think that this hire reflects that mindset. Finally, the off-the-field structure matters just as much as what happens on Saturdays. Hiring Dave Caldwell as general manager brings an NFL-style approach to roster management, the evaluation process, and the long-term planning. This is something that it feels like it's what college football is going towards. So it might be a little scary. Florida is kind of out on the forefront of that, which feels weird for us, longtime fans, but it does make sense. The head coach's job is just absolutely too big at the moment. So allowing that roster management to fall on somebody else, I do think is the way of the future. Pairing that with Cole Hurd as chief of staff gives Florida an organized, modern infrastructure that is built for today's college football reality. So when you step back and look at this staff as a whole, a few things become clear. This isn't a group built on hype. It is built on trust. Either guys that Summerall trusts personally, or guys that he trusts their track record, or guys that he trusts know the Florida way. It's built on development, and it's built on a clear identity in mind. Jon Sumrall didn't just fill jobs. He built what he feels like is a foundation. And listen, I get it. We have heard this before, but I cannot stress enough how different this staff construction is from the previous regime. Now, the real work is going to begin: recruiting, retention, development, and then winning in the SEC. But for the first time in a while, Florida football looks aligned from top to bottom. And that's what we have to go on at this moment. So I think we have a lot of reason to be very hopeful about the future. We'll see. As always, go Gators.